I hope you bear with me. I'm not used to making videos, especially of talking, so put that out of the way. I just wanted to go through what I've done to my Basher Rocksta, because I have had people ask me before about it, but I've never really made a build log for it. So I just wanted to start. It's basically what I got was the Basher Rocksta with the plastic gears before it, in the ready to run version, before it was released with the metal gears. So the first upgrade I did was inside the axles in here. I upgraded to the metal axles. Sorry, not the metal gears. I also upgraded the servo front and rear for metal gear servos, as you can see through there. And that helps with better longevity without the splines keep snapping off. I did keep it stock for the most part. I wanted to keep running with the original controller, so the electronics is basically, other than the change in the servo, it's the same as it comes out the box. It's the same ESC, same motors. So going into the modifications, what I've done to it, other than what I just said with the servo and the gears, the first upgrade I did was with the wheels and tyres. Originally, I got these from RC4WD, which are the Mickey Thompson Bahaclaw. These are really nice tyres, but I tend to find that they were a bit too small, because if we look here, this mounting section here at the back of the axle is constantly getting caught up on everything. And with the tyres, as you can see here, with these large ones, the tyres actually hide it behind the tyre, so it can actually, the tyre kicks in before it gets hung up on the mount section behind the axle. With the smaller diameter, these are 50. These ones are a 60mm outer diameter. These 50 ones would mean that the little part down here was still protruding from the back of the tyre a little bit, which meant it could still get easily hung up on things, which is unfortunate because I really do like these tyres. They're really soft, really sticky compound, and work really well. I did also upgrade to the RC 4-wheel drive stamped steel beadlock wheels, 1-inch beadlock wheels. They do add a bit of extra weight to the car, and I think if you just want a basic upgrade, these stamped steel wheels are actually a really good option. Along with the, if you do that along with the RC4WD scrambler tyres, which is these ones with a 60mm diameter, it makes for a good combination for just stock easy upgrade that can pretty much climb over anything and everything. So these beadlocks, however, are from is it the HBX Devastator or the FTX Ibex? It's the same car, different name. But these are plastic beadlocks. Now the difference between these plastic ones and the steel ones is that on the inside the tire, there's like a channel around the middle, and that gives you ample room in order to put like some wheel weights. If you don't want to cut the wheel weights, you can probably stick about 4 5-gram weights around it. If you cut them in half or cut halfway through and bend them, you could put a layer of 4, and then you could also put another layer on top to double the weight, which is what I've done on the front. I've done a double layer of weights on the front, which is about 40 gram per wheel extra, and a set of 4 on the rear, which is just 20 gram extra. So I've tried to weight it so it's more on the front for climbing. I've also, with these scramblers, I find that because of the larger size, the foam tends to flex far too much. The wall flex tends to flex far too much. At the moment, as you can see, it flexes. Now I have some hard foam in here, which I were meant to go on. The foam I did, I don't know if you know the pipe pool noodle or the pipe insulation foam. Depending on if you get the correct size, it will actually fit perfectly around the main size of the wheel, and the thickness is just right to fit most of the tyre. The thing is, the ones that I have in here right now was meant for this wheel, which is a bit narrower than what these ones are. So right now, if you look carefully, you can see that it's not quite so level. So I need to try and make some more hard foam inserts for these ones, which will be done at another date. But you can also, by using that insulation pipe or the pool noodle to create a hard foam in here, can stiffen up the wall of the tyre, preventing this side flex. And then have the soft foam on top of the pool noodle to give it just a little bit of, just a nice little bit of flex. It's just the right amount for it to climb over things. And give it enough grip to climb over objects and such, while not being too soft that it's got a bit of rigidity to it. Anyway, on to the next. We got the wheel, some extra 10-gram weights at the front, on the front axle, to try and give it even more weight on the front axle. There's I've got about 60 grams on here. That's 6 10-gram blocks. For the rear, I left it without any, so it's a lot lighter at the back end, a lot heavier at the front end. For other weights, I've got these ones in here, these brass blocks, which are from Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive mass damper blocks. There's about 3 packs worth there, but I was meaning to take those out, but I've not got them around to it. If I make the car too top heavy, then on certain crawls, when you start tipping it up like this, it'll just go straight over too much. You'll see it a bit later in this video with the second short course test, where it's going around the tree trunk, and it really is trying to balance it like this all the way around, and it's really on the edge of just toppling over. So I really need to try and reduce this weight. There. I really need to try and remove these weights, because you've also got the battery up here, which is causing the weight to be pretty high, top heavy. Now I've also added an extra couple of 10-gram weights here to try and bring the weight lower down. That'll be more beneficial if I do actually get rid of these ones. Now, again, you can see that I've got 2 more blocks here. Now, this is part of the main modification, which allows me to get more articulation out of the axles than the original box stock. If we take a look at this from the front, we should be able to twist it to its maximum, which is about that, which is about 80 degrees total. If I wanted it to go higher, I could easily just take the shocks off, and this would go perfectly 90 degree perpendicular. But that's really not helpful for crawling, so But also you find that if you do take the shocks off, the chassis, rather than rolling over like this, without the springs it will sit low, it will try to roll under like that. And that causes these axles to bind inwards like that, which is gets it bound up and causes it really difficult to use it for climbing or crawling. So it's always good to have at least some spring on. At the rear I have a full spring on both sides. At the front I have it trimmed so that the nose can drop a bit, so it can keep the weight a bit lower at the front end, but also prevent it from just, when you're climbing, prevent it from just popping up too quick or too soon, so you can get a slightly taller climb. Whilst the back one acts just to keep it more, keeps the weight further pushing forward. What else? Yeah, so onto the main modification what I've done, which is to change the entire suspension rod setup. Let's have a look at the box first, see if we can see it. So if we look here on the box, I've kept this one here and this one here, but I've cut off this bottom section of this like hourglass. So I've cut up to this one here and kept this hole. I've cut up to this one and cut this and kept this hole. And I've cut up to the middle and kept the top section. So all this middle section here, these three here, are completely removed. This allows me to make, this means I'm going to be changing the position of these arms. We'll now be mounting roughly in the middle where it's been cut off, and you'll see that in a second. So let's get the car again. So as we look, sorry about that. If you can see here, as I said, I've cut off the hourglass shape, so the main points down here where the arms used to mount, which was down here, is now gone. I've also completely removed the battery box. Now I've done this in order to do a couple of things. One is because I can mount the battery at the back here, which allows me to use either a much larger capacity battery, which I use at the moment is a 850 milliamp Zippy 25C, which gives me about an hour, 15 hour and a half run time depending on how I use it. Yeah, that aside, I've removed the battery box because I wanted to move the position of these arms. So I've added some of these mass damper blocks, again the Tamiya ones from up there. I've got a couple down here. This helps keep this nice and rigid so it's not flexing, but also helps act like a bit of a underplate. And take a look at the bottom. What I've done is I've crafted some homemade shafts, some homemade rods. I try to keep them the same shape, bending them to the same shape as the plastic ones. So I've got some metal axles, which are also from Tamiya mini 4-wheel drive cars, and I've bent them and I cut the metal exactly to the same length as the plastic ones, and then I've added the then I made thread on the end of each of them and added these rod ends. And because I didn't trim the metal down to the same size, it allows me to have a slight extra length on the car. But if you notice at the front end here, the back of the servo here should be almost level. It should leave just a tiny gap with the front of the car. So I've extended it a bit by using this modification. In order to get the articulation, I found that moving from the outside where they were mounted before, moving them to the inside like this, it gives me a much better pivot point. And that's where most of the extra articulation comes from. I also changed the position of the where the spring and the rods attach at the back and the front. So the rods, instead of going to the outside one, now go to the inside one, and the springs go to the outside one. This leaves you a lot more articulation than you originally have with the car, which is what helps me get almost 90 degrees of articulation. Again, if you took these springs off, the car can go about 100 degrees articulation, which is far too much, to be honest. But yeah, in order to, as I mentioned before, I've also extended the car. Because of the way I've made the rods, it's also extended the car. And so in order to, I had to replace the plastic one in here that connects to the top ball up here. And what I've done is I've taken some carbon fiber plate, which is again from the Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive. It's a ball link mass damper plate. I've cut the ends off because it's a bit like a T-plate with a square on it. But I've cut the ends off. I've then mounted, it's really difficult to see on here. Where is it? Yeah, it's really difficult to see, but in here, just in here, where you can see that black part, see if you can see the front one. Yeah, this part here, this black part here, which connects to the carbon. Yeah, so that black part, that is a black plastic part. It's from a Tamiya Mini 4-wheel drive brake kit. That helps with attaching it to the main point where it used to attach to, and that goes to the plate. And then on the plate I have fashioned a sort of screw mount for the other for the ball link rod end that goes to the middle ball on the axle. And that's extendable, or it can be shortened, so I can shorten the axle if I want to. I can extend the axle length forward or backwards. It also allows me to, depending on how far in or out I set it, I can also turn the caster of the entire axle at the same time, rather than depending on the caster down here. But yeah, that's basically an overview of the mods I've done to the car. Next up I'm going to show you a few little clips of how I test it on where I go walking my dog regularly. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.